Kennedy, what's the ritual with the tooth fairy?
So if you lost a tooth, you put it on your pillow, and then a tooth fairy will come and grab it, and then keep it, and then she'll bring you money.
Oh, nice.
Have you ever wondered how we came to this ritual? How in the United States we came to have our tooth fairy, and the process in which our child loses the baby tooth, and our child puts that tooth under the pillow. The tooth fairy comes at night and replaces that tooth with a coin. It's something that in all the different cultures across the US we tend to do. How did we come across this? How did our diverse country come to have our modern day tooth fairy? We did it through amalgamation. It's pieced together by so many different cultures that we've picked up. So when thinking about it, I first want to take a look at ancient Europe. Now, America definitely has some deep roots from Europe. So in ancient Europe, though, it started off drastically different than what our modern day tooth fairy is today. Instead of a tooth fairy, and instead of it being a positive thing about losing a tooth, it was a witch. Now, the belief was that if a child lost a tooth, the child then performed the ritual of taking the tooth and throwing the baby tooth into a fire. Now, the reason the child did that was because they were trying to keep the tooth away from the witch. Because if this witch were to get your tooth, that witch could have control over you, or that witch, because it had part of your body, that baby tooth, it could put a curse on you. Now, over time, that switched. And instead of throwing the tooth in a fire, then the child from Europe would take the baby tooth and would bury the tooth out in a field to prevent that witch from getting a hold of the tooth. Well, as time went on and Europe started to become more urbanized and there wasn't big fields around, children started planting the tooth actually in a flower pot or in like a windowsill flower. So that then turned into burying the tooth underneath your pillow. Now, ancient Viking history, they had a ritual where a child would lose a baby tooth, and the Vikings, the adults, would actually make a tooth payment, which is where we first start seeing a payment rather than the ancient European tradition of trying to keep it from a witch, prevent a curse. Ancient Vikings, they would make a tooth payment because they wanted the baby tooth. They saw that baby tooth as a product from a child would bring good luck to the Viking. So they would take that baby tooth and actually make jewelry out of it. And they believed wearing it in battle would make them more powerful and bring them luck in battle. Now in India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and East Asia, it was a little bit of a different story. They take the baby tooth and throw the tooth up on the roof. Now, the thought of throwing the baby tooth up on the roof changes, though, for each culture. So the ritual for East Asia is that if you lose a bottom tooth, the bottom tooth you throw up on the roof in hopes that that new adult tooth coming in actually follows where that baby tooth was thrown and would come in straight. And then if you lost an upper tooth, you would bury it in the ground. And again, it would be to help that adult tooth follow where that baby tooth went and to come down in straight. But in other cultures, the throwing on the roof was for all the baby teeth, and they would take the baby tooth and they would throw it on the roof. Now, the thought was that either a sparrow, a squirrel, or a mouse, and one of those, each culture was a little different, would come and take that baby tooth. And them coming and taking that baby tooth was a good thing. They wanted the animal to come and pick up their baby tooth from the roof. The Cherokee Indians would take the tooth and they would throw the baby tooth up in the air, later on up on a roof. And as they did it, they would have a chant, and they would say a chant about a beaver 4 times in a row, because their thought was that they wanted a beaver to come and get that tooth to then get their adult teeth to have the strength of a beaver's teeth. Now, it's very fascinating then, because then you see, okay, well, Cherokee Indians, they wanted this animal's particular, the beaver, for the strong teeth. Now, the most popular animal amongst different cultures for the ritual of a tooth fairy, for the ritual of losing their baby teeth, is actually a mouse. So in Spain, Peru, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, it was a toothed mouse. So much like the Cherokee Indians, they saw the mouse as a symbol of strong teeth, which mice do have strong teeth. Different cultures had different names for the toothed mouse. Now in Spain, the toothed mouse was referred to as El Ratoncito Perez, or El Raton. Where then, as in France, the toothed mouse was La Petite Souris. Now in France, it was the same thing that we now have today, and as modern day Europe, that the tooth was put under a pillow and the toothed mouse would come and take the tooth. But in Argentina, who also has the toothed mouse, theirs was different. You would actually take a cup of water and you would put the tooth in a cup of water by your bed at night. Now the thought was that the mouse would then come and drink the water because the mouse needed to be hydrated from traveling all over to different homes to collect teeth. And in place of the tooth, the empty glass would then have a coin when you woke up in the morning. South Africa has a toothed mouse as well, except rather than being under a pillow or in a glass of water, in South Africa, they would take the tooth and they would put it inside a slipper, and the toothed mouse would come and take the tooth from the slipper. In ancient Egypt, it's not an animal. Rather, it is the sun they were looking at. So in ancient Egypt, the ritual would be that you would take the baby tooth, you would wrap it in tissue, and you would throw the tooth at the sun. The reason behind it was because they wanted the new tooth that came in to be as bright as the sun. Eskimos also had an animal involved in their ritual. They would take the baby tooth and wrap it in some meat, and they would feed that meat with the tooth inside to a female wolf. And the thought of that was how strong the female wolf is and how strong the female wolf's teeth are, and that they wanted their new adult tooth to come in like the female wolf's teeth, nice and strong. Now, when you look at the United States and you look at our ritual around the tooth fairy, around losing a baby tooth, we developed our ritual through amalgamation from different folklore and ancient rituals around the world.